it is. And people are going to start rioting in the streets.
Was reported to have asked Putin for military support that would help him stay in power.
We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again.
And they ignore him. And 8 more years goes by till Bernie himself finally admits to his sons, hey, I've been running a Ponzi scheme.
Does its dominance mean it can use the alliance for its own ends?
Since 1981, bond yields, also known as coupon rates, have just gone down and down and down.
The Federal Reserve note will be your biggest financial liability. RTD Live Talk, Thursday night, the 7th day of the month of June. Checking in to see what is happening out here around the world in the monetary scene / financial scene. Also, to get your thoughts on the most recent video I just uploaded, which is in regards to the whole Fed coin, from a very interesting article that I came across that I thought was very, telling of the mindset of the cryptocurrency community, in the fact that that's the whole adoption of blockchain and it becoming more of a mainstream topic, how it will be presented pretty soon by the governments of some form or fashion, whether it be through a central bank or directly by a government, to and be presented as an alternative to the current national currencies, aka fiat currencies, which are all seeming to implode at the same time due to the fact the dollar, the Federal Reserve note, is increasing in purchasing power, strength in regards to its international value, as well as the emerging market economies that are suffering because of this lopsidedness in our monetary system. So, as always, the goal is to chime in, have people chime in, see what's going on out there, and give it a second or two before I actually dive into the conversation full-fledged. So, if you have any new viewers checking in, feel free to chime in the chat. Let me know where you're checking in from. Always interested in finding out who's tuning in and from where. So, anything happened? So far I got Pad on the chat. Pad, how you doing, my friend? Anything new happening in your world or in your area that's worth mentioning? I really didn't get a chance to comb through the news today to find out exactly what might have transpired around the world, other than hearing about Brazil finally. And with that, seeing how the economy seems to be imploding. And then we got Philman. How you doing, my friend? It says, question, Mike, when will the Federal Reserve end? Wow. When will the Federal Reserve end? That is a very great question, of which I don't think there's no real true valid answer that I can give, other than the fact the Federal Reserve, since it's the head honcho of all central banks, it was the first created central bank, it will probably be the last central bank standing. And so your guess would be good as mine. I think that after this next monetary implosion, depending on how our government and all the things happening right now currently with this administration, depending on what comes out, if we're able to shake out some more of the filth out of DC, as far as those that have sold out our nation to this globalist / establishment type of ordeal that's happening, if we're able to get some honest, true politicians in DC, then at that point I think we can probably look at an alternative to the whole central banking model. And ideally it would be worthwhile to turn over our monetary affairs back to the United States Treasury, where it was assigned prior to 1913 and everything that happened since then. So keep the long story short, at the end of the day, the Fed will be the last bank standing, so I don't see them going nowhere anytime soon. And I think it's just a matter of how our politicians choose to handle this, because as of now, that institution is not going anywhere, and they might end up even growing stronger, especially if they have a chance to implement that. If they have a chance to utilize this blockchain technology in a centralized manner to replace their own Federal Reserve note, and they end up coming out with a Fed coin or whatever else it might be, and it's their private property, which the Federal Reserve notes are their private property, then at that point, it's good to say they're going to be here forever, because once we go fully digital without any paper, there's no stopping any of those guys, in my opinion. Even the Holmes Rocks. How you doing, my friend? Says, what would you do if you were in charge of the Fed? If I was in charge of the Fed, that means that I would be positioned there by the powers that be, whatever the official terminology is. Some people say the establishment, the globalists, the elite, or whatever they're called. But if I was in charge, I mean, I was probably placed there intentionally by them to continue doing what has been done for the last 100 years, which is to drain this nation and the globe of all of its tangible wealth. And so just to show you how that statement is not far-fetched, if you look at history and you see how massive the Federal Reserve Bank has grown in regards to their balance sheet, the fact that they're the biggest real estate investors in the world, for the most part, having all those mortgage-backed securities, and then it's a matter of then the next implosion. Mark my words on this. We see how the Great Recession led to the Federal Reserve Bank getting involved into the real estate industry with mortgage-backed securities, buying up all that bad crap from the banks. And so right now they're landlords to a lot of people who own mortgages. And so this next go round, as we see what's happening in the European Union area, the EU is buying up all types of private debt. They're buying corporate bonds, government bonds. They buying up anything they can because it's easy to buy up stuff when you don't have to really be accountable to anyone. And at the drop of at the blip of a couple of digits, you can create fictional currency into existence that people will be willing to accept. So, point in case is, I believe that after this next hiccup, Federal Reserve, if they are not already, will be directly involved in purchasing private debt, as far as corporate debt from all the major, Fortune 500 companies. They'll be directly purchasing directly, and then they'll also on the back end to help the overall economy health and the investment portfolios of millions and millions of people. I believe that they will get directly into the stock market and they will begin purchasing directly, same way they're doing in Japan, I believe, as well as where else? And I think Japan definitely owns some stock market. I want to say China, but I'm not sure. But Federal Reserve Bank will, in the next go around, they'll get involved directly in corporate debt, buying up everything they can, and they'll purchase the stock market, which means they will own most shares in all the corporations around the world. So not only will they own real estate, they're going to own corporations as well. At that point, what can be done if a single entity owns all of that? That is the ultimate plan, to basically monopolize the national currency of this country and then flood it around the world, which they're doing. And then at the end of the day, as the hiccups continue to grow, get the actual tangible wealth. So that's what I believe will happen. I don't think the Fed is going nowhere anytime soon. So we'll see. Pab says, my neighbor told me yesterday he plans on retiring at 60. He's a factory worker, no sense of reality. He's about 40. Okay, so he's saying he plans on retiring at 60, and right now he's 40. So that gives him 20 years to be able to do such. And so that's very ambitious, of course, goal to be able to say, hey, 20 years from now, I'm calling it quits. But my opinion, and Pat, I'm sure you probably would agree if you haven't tried to share with him this information already, that between now and the next 20 years, it's good to say that the current retirement paradigm will not be the same. So I don't think that people will be so willing to up and retire, especially if there's some type of hiccup in the market to where all that portfolio wealth is gone, i.e. their corporations may be out of business and things of that nature. There may not be any savings or whatnot for people to retire with, in my opinion. And so I believe the good example that we all, as depending on how old you are, how young you are, if you're a millennial, Generation X, Generation Z, you will get a chance to be a firsthand witness as to how this baby boomer situation play out, because I believe that this will be the first primary true example of the default and the deception that was been bred into our system of work hard, go to school, get a job, save, retire, and then retire. That retirement part is going to implode because 2008, 2009, a lot of people lost a lot of wealth. As I saw in another article, $16 trillion disappeared. It hurt a lot of people's portfolios, and a lot of older people are right now working at Walmart, as well as just being greeters and not living as comfortable as they would have planned when they were 30 or 40 years old. So I believe we're going to witness a lot of senior citizens / baby boomers opting out as far as having to go back into the workforce. So we'll see how that goes. It says, deceive no more. You put the real nice thing robbing us. You put that real nice there robbing us. Yeah, they're robbing us. But yeah, it's hard to say that. You know, I could say, yeah, they're straight jerking us. I mean, it's literally, it's the greatest heist in human history. If you think about it, I mean, just to be truthful, be upfront with you, the idea that you have a private organization that does nothing other than monitor and have 2 or 3 mandates that they're supposed to stick to all along the purchasing power. I got a graph here. All along the purchasing power of their product. Their primary product has lost more value than ever. And I'll actually put up my little thingy that I have here. And so hopefully you can see it, but let me see, make sure I get this in focus. Okay, here we go, straighten it up. So they've lost, so over here, this Federal Reserve note here has lost more purchasing power over the last 100 years than, you know, anyone in their right frame of mind will be willing to admit and to recognize and acknowledge. And then you look on the other end, what has been considered sound money, what was money prior to the Federal Reserve coming into play, it, in terms of how many notes it takes to acquire one of these pieces of metal, has steadily gone up. So as you see over here, it's going up continuously over the last 100 years. So if you keep in mind that 1 ounce of silver, say in 1960 or so, was around 94 cents, $1, give or take, that was pretty expensive. But yet now 1 round is, you know, depending on what type of round or coin you're purchasing, it's close to 20 pieces of paper. So you go from needing 90 cents in the 60s, give or take or whatever, to needing 20 pieces of paper now. That's a very bad indicator of how poorly that paper has retained its purchasing power, because it takes more paper to buy metal. So saying all that, that lets me know that if that was an actual company that was on the just publicly traded and all that stuff like that, for their product over the last 100 years to have been so poorly maintained as far as its value and the ability of their product to benefit humanity and to sustain the livelihoods of people, anybody else in any situation, you would definitely opt out, or you would call that person or that company to the carpet as delivering poor customer service, a poor product. Like central banks, fiat currencies are poor products that eats away at humanity's livelihoods, and it's the reason why nowadays the cost of living is so expensive. And to take it even further, I've done some research into the whole idea that in the 1950s and 60s, it was ideal to have a single income household where the dad or the mom or whatever, the dad primarily worked in the plants, and this was during the industrial boom, and then the wife stayed at home with the kids, so the family structure was a lot stronger. You know, there was a much higher demographic as far as adults willing to have children. So you have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 kids, and it was manageable. Nowadays, you can't even put your kids to work. That's how poorly ran that organization is, but it was designed to do that. So I'm not surprised. It says, in order to bring in their Jewish savior, their world must beg for their solution. This has been, and if you are able and willing to connect all those dots to how we arrived to this point, I think we're right on pace. And so that the Bible there does a good job of giving us a heads up into what's coming. So I believe that Jesus Christ is the savior of humanity. And so I personally acknowledge him as a king, which is what he claimed himself to be when he came and what he's going to return as. So that's my personal opinion there. It says, Mike, I can't yell him how I say for fear of robbery. I can't yell him how I say for fear of robbery. I'm assuming that's what your friend that's looking to retire. Biggest thing is, Paz, you know, a lot of people just won't give in, won't believe, won't have confidence in the idea that this financial matrix, this illusion that we're a part of, is that they won't wake up. And so it's just unfortunate, but you know, you continue to be a friend, continue to love on him, continue to pray for him, continue to just be a friend, and share with him information as time comes, and hopefully something clicks. But other than that, you got to keep on moving, doing what you do. I still don't get why Congress gave up the right to print money. Guess someone was a great salesman. Yeah, and so if you look at the whole Jekyll's Island and how Senator Aldrich came up with the Aldrich bill, which is basically the Federal Reserve bill that was redoctored or whatever, and given a new name, it looks like the model has always been to, for the wealthiest / the elite of the world, those who possess the most tangible wealth, ideally we're talking about the families here. We're talking about the Rothschilds, Rothschilds, the Coombe and Loeb, and all those families that were basically a part of the money trust. So if you Google the word money trust, you'll get an idea of what families were involved with the whole creation of the Federal Reserve. And so let me, we can take it there real quick. So here we have the idea. The Peugeot Committee was a committee formed during the whole introduction of the Federal Reserve Bill. So Peugeot was a senator who was given charge of coming up with a sustainable bill to help stave off what happened prior to 1913 was in 1907 there was a Great Recession or panic, the Panic of 1907. So that's another thing. If you want to find out history, look up panics. So Panic of 1907, Panic of 1897, this panic, which we call recessions, depressions. The Panic of 1907 led to the Peugeot Committee, which is a formation of a group of individuals in charge of coming up with a way to solve our financial woes. From this, you have a lot of people who got involved. So it talks about the Peugeot report singled out individual bankers, including Paul Warburg, Jacob S. Schiff, and Felix Warburg, William Rockefeller, Benjamin Strong. It says the report identified over $22 billion in resources and capitalization controlled through 341 directorships held in 112 corporations by the members of the empire. Headed by J.P. Morgan. So this Peugeot committee was in charge of looking into the whole ordeals of this bill that was proposed. And so they came up with the idea that these gentlemen here, Warburg, Schiff, Rockefeller, Strong, were all involved in this whole money trust aspect. So these were the biggest, most heaviest, wealthy guys that were public. And so as you notice here, it didn't say anything about Rothschild, but they were the underbackings to a lot of these. So this is like, what the origins of this whole central banking model originated from in the form of what we have now. And so this was all in reference to a question, of course, but I forgot what the question was. But this is when you Google the word money trust, you'll find out who the big wigs are. And these families still have their hands in because they're the ones that run all the J.P. Morgan banks and whatever else. They changed the names a lot, but they are still the big head honchos that are receiving all the benefits for basically owning the Federal Reserve. So that's a little something there on the side for those that were not aware of that. It says a Jewish savior is not Jesus, it's man, a man. Fair enough. Cost of living ID cheaper now than in 5 years from now. Cost of living cheaper now. Yeah, definitely. The cost of living now is as cheap as it's going to get, as I always mention. Cashier Food Lion handed me a pre-1964 quarter today. Home rocks. You hit it big, my friend. Congrats. I'm sure that the cashier had no clue what he was doing. If he had known, he wouldn't have gave it away. He would have just exchanged one of his nickels for that nickel. It says, look unto which congressmen were on the Titanic. Ooh, that's a good one. I never thought about that one. It says the Bible talks about the money changers and that's what these people have done. They've changed money from gold and silver and the paper. Very true. Yeshua was the son of man. That man was Joseph. Bible study Thursday, Proverbs 8:10. All righty, Ryan. Back in 1910, the president sold out the people to the central banks. Yep, the presidents did, but officially, Woodrow Wilson signed his name on the dotted line, making it official. And so if you look at Woodrow Wilson's, career path, and just to, take it a little deeper, since, we all here tonight, let's be real with each other. If you look at Woodrow Wilson's career pathway to the presidency, I saw a lot of similarities of what our former president, Barack Obama's pathway. Woodrow Wilson was a college professor, no real foundation in politics whatsoever. And he was, out of nowhere, put in a position where he became a mainstream gentleman. It had some funding behind him. Guess who funded him? The bankers. And then next thing you know, within a short period of time, his name was in the presidential race, and lo and behold, he becomes president. And then he ended up signing one of the most lethalest, deadliest bills ever created in our 200 and something year history of as a nation. And then when he retired and what later on in life wrote a memoirs talking about how he regrets signing the Federal Reserve into law. So I saw a lot of similarities when I was looking at history about, Woodrow Wilson not having a career, not being a career-long politician, but being a college professor or a college dean of whatever he was, and then became president, similar to what our former president Barack Obama pathway in my opinion. It says, back in 1910, check out the history of great American fortunes by Gus Myers. I will. The Panic of 97 was a false flag and lasted only 6 months, but that panic was a planned event by the banking industry because they ended up calling in a lot of debts, calling in a lot of debt that they knew people couldn't afford to pay, because those banks they monopolized the credit industry as far as basically calling in to all the farmers who couldn't sell their land or who didn't have the money, causing a panic because there's a panic freeze. Whenever the bankers want to cause a problem, all you got to do is just stop credit. You stop credit, that cuts off industry, and then you call in some of those loans. And if everybody living off credit, how can you call in loans and expect people to pay? Not possible. But that was what happened in 1907. And so it wasn't by accident. It was by design. So they did it on purpose to basically get this whole Federal Reserve or Aldrich bill rolling. Question, Mike says, have you noticed on the new $100 bill they've changed Federal Reserve note to Treasury note? Why do you think they changed it? Good point there. I haven't. I saw some videos on it. And so since we own here, let's go ahead and look it up. $100 bill. So we look at, let me see here. All right, so let's pull this up and let's study this thing together. Okay, so let me see. The United States of America, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. We have Federal Reserve. We have $100. We have Secretary of Treasury, Treasury of the United States. We have Franklin. We got all this impressive ink stuff. What I've noticed a lot about is people mention how much like the gold feather. You got this gold ink container. Then you have this gold writing here, which is very interesting. And so I'm looking for where it says Treasury note. The Federal Reserve note, the $100 bill of the United States of America. This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. It's legal tender. It'd be worth your while to study legal tender. You'll also find out what else is considered legal tender. So I'm not really seeing anything about Treasury notes. I could be wrong. So somebody let me know if I'm missing out on something, because I don't see anything offhand, but I could be wrong. So let me see here. It says, where exactly was that? That's 6 months. Do you think they changed it? And as far as if it is there, the Treasury note, I didn't see it, but I've heard about the idea. This just all that gold in of itself is different. And so definitely there's always hidden meaning. There's always hidden meaning in anything that's made public, just because I've heard and I've noticed that it's always good to give a heads up to those that are aware. Just to, I guess, like I remember watching some old Lindsey Williams videos, and he was talking about his elite friends, and he was saying how it is a bankers, or it's a establishment or money trust, or whoever they call themselves, whatever they are, it's their code to give warning. So they'll tell an insider. So you got all these insiders that know this, know that. They'll come out and say, hey, on this amount of time frame, expect this, knowing that only the people who are, labeled conspiracy theorists are the ones that's listening to it anyway. So you have a very small few that are aware of whatever it is that was unveiled to the public that might or might not come true. But I do believe it was by design. Of course, nothing is by accident in regards to all its subject matter, in my opinion. It says, in your opinion, what will the economic basis structure resemble after the collapse? Economic basic structure. Breland, Clark, very good question. Man, that's a very good question. And I think here's what makes it very difficult to even begin to play around with what it could be, is because the United States of America, in my opinion, and the Federal Reserve Bank are the first, and in my opinion, they'll be the last to standing. The Federal Reserve note will be the last national currency standing, because it is the current reserve currency. So everyone currently needs to possess Federal Reserve notes currently. And so everybody around us will crumble, as we see what's happening in the emerging markets, because everyone's based upon debt, and their debt is all tied to Federal Reserve notes, whether or not they have enough notes in their reserves to purchase back their own bonds and debt to balance off their own currency and all that stuff like that, the technical stuff. So it's good to say that a lot of the countries will begin using up their reserves. I mean, they're going to be running low on Federal Reserve notes. Then we're going to see dominoes begin to fall in Argentina, Brazil, all those countries that only can borrow, and they're going to borrow in what? Either SDRs or Federal Reserve notes. So debt going to continue to pile up. Currency is going to be fluctuating. The dollar may gain in strength. Countries around us implode, and then we are the last ones standing. But then here's where I think it gets tricky, is because everything that China and Russia is doing out east, they are making preparations for the time that they themselves have to probably intentionally reset things, because the yuan and the ruble are debt-based currencies as well. But they may attach and cut on our light switch, as I always say, backing it by gold, which would then be the blow that hurts us on this side, because you're going to have all those countries hurting, joining along with AIIB, all those investment banks and the BRICS, and they're going to be doing business on an international stage using gold and blockchain-based gold transactions, in my opinion. So that means we're going to be on the outside stuck with all these damn paper that nobody wants. And then here comes the event that happens here, which resembles a lot what's happening in Venezuela and Zimbabwe, where you have too many pieces of paper and digits and not enough goods. There will be a hyperinflationary type of event, and that event will unfold to flat out civil war within our country, because people will then, everybody might, like in Zimbabwe, I carry like a $50 million note in my wallet, just as a reminder of what monetary policy and fiscal policy, when they collide, when it gets out of hand, what you can expect. So imagine in this country here, where the 1, 2, 5, 10, 50, or 20, 20, 50, 100, those 6 denominations of bills we have now no longer cut it. And that's very doable, just because all it takes is, say, 20, 30, 40, 50% inflation type of thing. And then at that point, it's going to spike up to 1,000, 2,000, whatever it is in Venezuela right now. It's like 20,000% inflation, to the point where we're going to need some more zeros to those notes. So I don't think they're going to introduce a whole new currency, like the $100, add a zero to that, so it'd be 1,000. Then you got then they introduce a $5,000 note, all those high denomination notes like in other countries, because it'll be too late for us, because by that time, all the countries around us will have gold denominated type of things, where they're going to have to issue something new. And then hence the whole idea of Fed coin coming in and whatever else might be an alternative to reestablish confidence. So I see us entering into a monetary collapse / fiasco, which will then result in complete civil war amongst the people here, because it's going to be a race to get a hold of resources and goods. There's going to be a lot of pissed senior citizens. There's 74 million baby boomers that will then have an account with, as many zeros as they want in it, but it won't purchase anything. So they're going to be pissed and hitting the streets. The younger generation that never knew how to work or earn anything, they're going to be pissed. So they hitting the streets. So, if everybody on the streets, like in Venezuela, protesting, whatever, we're going to need solutions. And then it's going to be easier to say, hey, we got this new Fed coin, Treasury coin, whatever it is, that will be deposited directly into your, download this app or log into this here, into your social security number, as I mentioned in prior things, and we'll airdrop you 100, Fed coin tokens. And it's by law, you have to, if you're a vendor, you have to accept it, whatever. So that's kind of how it will play out. But I believe it's going to be similar to what's happening all around us. Man, that was a long answer. I apologize for drawing on that long. So if the banks call in and collect debt and we have a Federal Reserve, there's no way it all can be repaid. You guys know a lot more about this than I do. Sorry to ask him a question. Home rocks. So if it's a very rare case, it'd be very difficult for banks to call in loans now, but they have every right to do so, I believe. And if they do, they are fully aware that people will not be able to repay these astronomical amounts of money on these mortgages, car loans, definitely student loans. So basically what that means is all those banks will become real estate owners. They'll own all these mortgages, all these houses. They'll have buku houses on their books. And at that point, those who are not able to afford, I can see most of the population just saying, hell, take your house, because it's going to be a long period of time before people can actually be displaced out of their house. Because imagine your whole community, everyone pretty much, most part, have mortgages, and everybody defaults or can't pay or can't, pay their monthly bills. There's going to be a lot of people squatting. And so it's going to be normal to squat, in my opinion, just because who can afford to pay? You can't, hire enough police officers to come remove people, because, hell, the police force may end up being in the same situation. The hologram strip is of a Liberty Bell ringing. Ryan, we have no gold. Let me see. So, okay, keep on moving. Very good. So, as always, the phone line's open. Anybody want to call in and chime in and share their thoughts? I would definitely love to hear some of that, some people's voice. Make sure my ringer's on. It says the last collapse was in 1971 when Nixon defaulted on the gold. Very true. It says the last collapse, says China is not buying our debt. They are letting the bonds expire, then getting paid in dollars, which they use on the Silk Road. Yes, Tony, that's a great point. So the Silk Road will be the next. It will be the next. What we had a period of an industrialized growth, primarily based upon World War I and II and everything after to the Vietnam War. So that 56-year stretch made America great because we were able to grow, produce, manufacture everything and export it to the world. And then after 1971, as Pat mentioned, that's when we defaulted. And from that point, we stopped really sending manufactured goods. We start sending them paper and digits and debt. And so now they're tired of it. So we'll see how that goes. And then, this is a side note, but please, anybody. So it just came to mind. Over the last couple live streams, I've been getting more comments saying that, Michael, we can't hear you. Your audio is low. And so when I go back and replay it, the audio sounds fine to me. So if you don't mind, those that are watching, let me know if my audio is good as far as it being of decent volume, because apart from me having my mic right here, it's all good on my end when I listen to the replays. So I want to make sure that you can hear me. Jose, good audio. Appreciate you, my friend. So yeah, it does bother me that I hear your audio is bad, but I'm like, when I replay it, it sounds good to me. Joe Woods, yeah, RTD for president. Yeah, that's not me, man. I believe, and yeah, to be a politician, to be a chosen or to be an elected official, I think is the second. Let me see. It's about the second. It's the second greatest responsibility a man or woman could have at this day and age, because being a father and a husband is first and foremost, but then choosing to serve the public is the second greatest, because in order to do a good job, you're going to have to make some tough decisions. And nowadays, it is too hard to make those decisions because we have been indoctrinated with socialistic type of policies, primarily entitlements and things of that nature. So here in this country here, and in the developed world in general, we're used to getting our way. And if we don't get our way, we pitch a fit, and then we'll hire the next candidate that'll say he'll promise us ABC. We're going to go for that guy. Never mind how it's going to impact our children or our children's children. We want our best goods and our benefits right now or nothing else. Hence the idea of the American population, the baby boomers. I'm going to be real with you. The baby boomers, in my opinion, because they were living high on the hog during the industrialization of our nation, they were the children born in the 60s and whatnot. So they were born into a time of prosperity, i.e. credit, to the point where they fell asleep at the wheel and didn't really become active and keep an eye on politicians, to where we were able to become a nation that doesn't produce anything but consumes everything. And so here we are now in a situation where all those promises are coming to an end because they were based upon debt without any thought process as to who's going to pay those bills. Nevertheless, the idea, nobody ever fathomed that we would be in a monetary environment where you would put money in a bank and then still come out short on the other end. Like, I think about the idea of the whole cash back. Does that bother anybody? Anybody here want to share their thoughts on getting cash back? Who would rather have cash back or have some interest on their deposits? Like, who ever thought years ago that we would be a country that would tolerate lending money to a financial institution and in nominal terms, either just staying at pace, and in real terms, actually losing money? So here we go. Nobody pays attention to monetary financial stuff. We're in this predicament. So anybody that was of character and honest and really cared about our country, they wouldn't get elected, i.e. people think Ron Paul was a gentleman that was true to the core. He presented that to the public. Then we have his son Rand Paul. Then we have anybody else that claims under the libertarian movement to be truthful and to get our country back to sound money, whatever, those guys don't get no airplay. They don't get no attention. So it'd be hard to become a public official to do things honest in this country. So yeah, we need it though. I do agree. We do need people who are able to do it. Says, how do you think the grand solar minimum is affecting our money and economy situation? I think the Silk Road is a play on the event coming. Let me see. The grand solar minimum. I am not familiar with that terminology. 400 years of sunspot observation says the solar minimum and solar maximum. Solar minima and maxima are the two extremes of the sun's 11-year activity cycle. At a maximum, the sun is peppered with sunspots, solar flares erupts, and the sun hurls billion-ton clouds of electrified gas into space. That is a very good question. I am not familiar with that subject matter. I've heard about, sun flares or eruptions and things, but I've never dived into it. But I would be interested in, Jose, I would be interested in hearing your thoughts on it. Do you believe that it plays into what we're experiencing now, and that will be the future? As far, clearly solar power, green energy, I think is very beneficial. More importantly, because you can be independent of this monopolized industry of energy. So I am a big fan of solar and things like that nature. Would love to find out more. And years ago, I still do. I have solar panels on my house. And years ago, prior to my meter being swapped out for a digital meter, when I had the analog meter, I was loving it. My thing was spinning backwards all day long with full lights on in my house. But that all changed when we went to digital, which I don't like that either. So I opted out, and I pay the electrical company to basically I pay the electrical company to use their energy. It's unfortunate because it's monopolized. We don't have many options, and I'm sure you don't have many options either. Says Mike, your opinion. Mike, what's up? What's up, Tony? Talk to me. Yes, I do. Yeah, well, Jose, share some of that in the call in and share your thoughts if you like. I like to hear your thoughts via voice if you like. I didn't know you already gone live. Yes, I'm going live. Been about 30-40 minutes. It says, let's read tea leaves. Okay. What's your net worth, RTD? Several mil. Stampede's ADP. I'm far from that. I think, this might sound crazy. My net worth and my wisdom far exceeds my net worth in my pockets, for whatever that's worth. I think the Lord has been very good to me as far as giving me some foresight and wisdom and discernment that is more valuable to me than any form of money whatsoever. It says, Mike, do you think the Feds will be able to raise the rate next week and no more for the rest of the year? Whew, Tony, that's a very good question, my friend. Will they? Here's the thing. Sure, why not? Why not? Continue to raise it, because they've already witnessed the problems it's causing in the emerging markets. So I can imagine them continue to hike it up one or two more points to wherever they can get it before 2019 sets in, or the end of this year, when they need to then cut it 3 or 4 points and take us into negative. So I don't think it really matters if they hike it 1 or 2 more times, because no matter what, I'm sure you can agree they have to cut it. So if they got to cut it, it'll give them a little bit of something extra to say we're gonna cut it just to 0 up front, to just to put some confidence in the market temporarily before they are forced to then go negative in nominal terms. But so I think they probably will hike it. Why not? Just go ahead and hike it. The quicker they hike this thing up, the more problems they'll cause in the emerging markets, the more problems and the more likely are the chance of them speeding this thing up just to stop, to prevent them from continuing to paper over and band-aid this economy. I think it's better to face the pain and discomfort now so that people can get on a high horse. Everybody can wake up and automatically, just to use the analogy of being plugged into the matrix, which I love to use, is that, the moment there's a shock or hiccup, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be jolted up. They're going to they're going to come to their senses like, damn, like this is the same thing that happened in 2007, 2008, the Great Recession. Where was I? They're going to be, shocked beyond imagination. But yet it was here the whole time. They just weren't paying attention. So I think people will be more active, more willing to take action, but it won't be too late, but it's going to be very difficult for people to begin adjusting their financial situation at that point, nevertheless their livelihoods. It says, let me see. So what's happening? 50 billion put pressure on markets. 50 billion puts pressure on markets. Yeah, it doesn't. That's the thing. Like right now, our economy is so fragile. I don't think it takes much to cause problems in one country, and then we run into the whole debt contagion aspect, which causes problems. So it doesn't take much, in my opinion, to really have this thing unravel at the seams. Yeah, the funds rate's at 1.75, but I get 10th of 1%. Yeah, so okay, so the Fed's rate is 1.75, and savings and checking account, or savings account rather, I think the national average last time I looked was 0.01 for just your average savings account. And so now they've come up with so many different gimmicks to try to get you to deposit money. They got banks that's getting into cryptocurrency pretty soon. So once these, I actually saw some stuff about these crypto index funds, which are in the works. So you better believe that you're going to have an opportunity now. You're going to be getting stuff in the mail. You're going to be getting stuff from your bank, your insurance companies, saying that they now are a part of this index fund, that you can directly invest in cryptos through them. And of course, you know, they'll monitor it for you for a fee. So expect your bank, expect your credit union too to get involved in cryptos. Expect everybody that does anything in the financial sector to begin dipping and dabbing in the blockchain / crypto area, just because it's an exciting diversion from the crumbling current monetary system of national currencies. So I can see why the regulators will probably allow some of these coins to become primary securities that can be utilized with very little minimum, with very little regulation, just because they want people to have an option as things unfold. So it'll be easier to allow people that become aware and become awake to dip and dabble into currencies, so that they'll have an option of being able to interchange amongst one another, in my opinion. So I missed someone call. Feel free to call back. I was trying to get to you. It says it has just waiting for the system to fail so we can be free. Yeah, but the thing about this, Scott, that's a very good point there. So we can be free, but freedom comes at a great cost, and I believe it's going to come with a lot of pain. And so I try to just, and of course, you guys, if you follow me, you know I stay in tune with all of the events happening, such as what's happening. You know, Venezuela is the nearest, and Argentina and Venezuela are the nearest to my heart in regards to the subject matter, just because I've been to those lands. I know people there, and I love Central and South America just because I've had so many great memories there. So I really fall for the pain they're going for. So I stay tuned in a lot more than I do anywhere else. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, Mike. This is Jose.
Hey there, Jose.
I'm a little active right now.
Thank you, sir. How you doing?
Good. It just I just was interested because I guess you haven't heard about the ground solar minimum, and I don't know if any of the rest of your followers are interested, but a lot of the people that I follow that know about this, I put on there the Adapt 2030 on YouTube channel. It really much it's coinciding with all the problems around the world, basically because of like extreme weather events. And I can't tell you the number exactly about the cycles with the minimums because I'm not an expert, but
yeah,
how they're the guy I listened to, and he was talking about how in Asia now they're starting to implement kind of like crypto technology into like future crop, where they're already selling like 2-3 years in the future what they expect crop's going to be because of how valuable people already see that like the crop losses are going to make food go up, so they already want to buy it 2-3 years in advance.
Yeah.
For example, I come from a place in Mexico where the avocado industry is huge. And 5 years ago, I was talking with relatives that are from the area, and they were just talking about how the Chinese already went in there and bought 20 years worth of lease of avocado just to send straight to China.
Wow.
So I was like, wow, look, that was 5 years ago. I can't imagine how much more they've bought around the world in contracts worth of food.
Yeah.
I'm thinking food because they have the most population, so that's probably their biggest concern. But I've also been researching that there's a lot of like water shortages because of the food that's being grown.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of like big companies like Coca-Cola now in central Mexico buying up the groundwater, I guess because Mexico can actually sell privately to companies the entire groundwater, in certain areas, and the population has no rights to it. So I was just, I thought that you might know some of this, or maybe some of your followers might comment on it, that how this is, I think that it's affecting where prices are going because of what people see in the future.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with all of that to that extent, but I do follow other people who comment on things of that nature. And I know it even in having prior guests, having Rick Rule on the show, he's the big money investor, and he talks about the importance of him, how he owns water, like he owns rights to water, because he's saying that we gonna always need anything that we need and gonna need. He say he owns it or gonna own some of it. So water, land, and of course all the things that we don't even think about, like just the stuff under the ground, holds extreme value that we're gonna need. So I'm not surprised that people are buying 20, 30 years supplies, years of worth of supply ahead of time. And speaking of which, I know just from prior, news stories how a lot of land and a lot of anything tangible supposedly is going to be become a blockchain based commodity. And so whatever that, I think it was A chain or whatever it is, that came out publicly from Sean from SGT mentioned about them digitizing anything and everything, putting it on the blockchain. So I can see how that plays into all that, of where clearly, anything God made is going to be on the blockchain eventually, and including they're going to try to put people, our social securities and all that stuff on the blockchain as well, and make us a part of this centralized society that is coming, because it's already written, in my opinion. But another point I want to hint at is the whole idea. Do you think this solar flare, this solar stuff, has anything to do with what's happening with these volcanoes and earthquakes that seem to be picking up pace, or I'm hearing about them more? Do you think that stuff is interconnected?
Well, I do listen to Cliff High. I'm sure that you're familiar with Cliff High. He's on YouTube a lot, and I do kind of tend to agree with most of his theories on the type of energy that's coming around the sun due to the activity going low, and the magnetism, I guess, around it is not protecting us as much. So supposedly it's heating up our core with some sort of new sun rays, or the rays that are actually going around the sun actually hitting us more often. So I kind of do agree with him that we are having more of these, I think he calls it expando Earth events, where he believes the Earth is expanding because it's heating up in the core, and it has to push out, the heat. Heat expands, so it's only natural that a material will expand, to fill in the gap of the pressure that it's building. Yeah,
and what?
So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, and what I was going to hint at is the fact that now that I'm more aware of more natural events that are occurring, it's unfortunate that society has built cities and foundations on these lands, such as all the volcanic areas that are just, that were here prior to, us actually being here physically. But yet we've built and established lives and cities on top of these mountains. So when you hear about stuff erupting and burning cities, burning houses, killing people, it's a tragedy. And so I'm thinking, like, it looks like the earth is beginning to tell us something, because there is just responding. It's perfectly natural, but it's unfortunate that people are losing their houses and their lives. But the volcano, you should know that you build near a volcano, it can erupt any minute. Or if you live below sea level, that, a flood or anything could come in and take you out the game in that regard. So we're finding out a lot about this earth and how we've manipulated and taken advantage of land. And it's starting to talk to us back, it seems like, in a very unfortunate way for a lot of people. So, but I thank you for calling in, my friend. Appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us.
No, thank you for your show. It's great.
Thank you, buddy. Have a good night. Yeah, man, that's interesting. That's very interesting. The earth is telling us something. It says, what will be the last industry still prosperous and beneficial to employ the everyday citizen? Breland Clark. Very good question, Breland. And of course, other than just from what I've gathered from prior guests and what I've noticed seemed to be a trend, I would say that I personally recognize the idea that technology is continuing to, the cycles of technology is speeding up rapidly, i.e. the example of like now the word blockchain. Blockchain has been around for a while, but not in a public forum, in an open ledger format where people can copy code and stuff like that in a much faster and more efficient way, where a lot of businesses are going to be on the blockchain pretty soon. And speaking of which, I actually had an interview with a gentleman who is starting, he already merged blockchain and AI together. So I'm going to release that next week. But it's a great conversation where it got me thinking about all the opportunities coming dealing with the blockchain and artificial intelligence. So those two areas are going to be a game changer for humanity. So I find it enjoyable to learn about things of that nature. So I think that any type of tech savvy person who's aware of computer type things, getting a little bit of head start in learning that language, because coding and things of that nature is a language, just like I'm speaking English now, that controls systems, which controls robots, controls all this stuff that will become dominant. So getting ahead in those sectors might be worthwhile. And then on top of that, anything where you can use your hands to physically engage the elements of the earth, whether it be build houses, repair houses, anything where there may not be much need for physical labor anymore because machines can do it, but there's going to be people needed to repair the machines. So it's going to always boil down to tech type things, in my opinion. It says, what would be the, let me see, it says, check David Dilley's stuff on climate. Also adapt 2030 on YouTube. Very interesting stuff. Will do. Philman says, question, Mike, I remember when I heard that Canada, US, and Mexico were going to create a union called American Union. Do you believe the elites are destroying the dollar to create American Union money? Good call. Get one. And so I became aware of the whole American Union, and suppose it was an alleged picture of American Union note or something of that nature circulating. And of course, that was one of fillers that was allowed to be leaked, in my opinion, to get people's opinions and get people talking about it, just to introduce people. As I mentioned earlier, the goal is to always give people heads up, kind of, into what could be, so the people presenting it can gain a pulse as to how people are responding. But anyway, so as far as the American Union, I do believe that. So here's where I think that they still could be on course for the whole American Union, because the EU is one entity as a whole. Experiment is failing, but it's all a part of experimenting to see what works. So I see that it doesn't work. They knew it wouldn't work, but yet it still can be saved if they are able to get them under, one sovereign government in that region, where if all those EU countries give up their sovereignty to one entity, they can make that situation last a little longer, which will be a great example for them to use with us to say that, hey, let's connect the North American bloc. Canada, United States, and Mexico, you are all on the same continent. Let's just come together as one and be a single entity. Let's remove the borders. You can go north, I can go south. Let's live together and do commerce, and we'll have all these blocks and this whatever. So that is ultimately, and I believe that that's going to be the end road. We're going to get to that. I think that concept would have been sped up a lot faster had we had a different administration in now. But it's interesting to see, and we'll find out exactly how this plays out based upon this whole trade war and tariff war that current administration is having with Canada and China and you name it, Mexico now. And so if you haven't noticed, I just read yesterday or today that the peso, the moment that the Mexican government announced tariffs on pork, the peso dropped. So it's going to hurt them to trying to get back at us. And so it's all coming together now as far as the idea that governments are being exposed for having sold their country and their population out to the financial institutions that are the foundations of all these countries. And it has to do with the currencies. So the currencies at the end of the day are losing value tremendously while the dollar is gaining its strength. But it's only a short amount of time, in my opinion, before we are the last currency of this kind to be standing. And then it's going to take China or Russia only in their partnerships and unions or whatever to derail the dollar. And when that happens, we'll get a taste of our own medicine that our country has been injecting upon the world pretty soon. So for whatever that's worth, it says the singularity is on the horizon, very much so. I can keep you cool or make you hot. I have a job whether you do or not. Okay. Keep you cool. So I'm assuming you are, I don't know. I'll leave that alone. The job we will have is surviving. It's good to know how to hunt, fish. Otherwise, we will meet. Using our hands, man. That's the thing. We've been We've been putting these cities with grocery stores and everything provided for us to where mankind doesn't know how to survive out in nature, apart from people who are, frequently camping and things of that nature, which that may not be the same anymore. But if you know how to cook and kill something to eat it, that'll be something to feed your family. Holiday tariffs trigger the Great Depression. Holiday tariffs trigger the Great Depression. Let me see. I've heard about that, or it started some wars. I don't know how much. Usually tariffs start wars. It says that Smoot Hawley. Let me go ahead and look that up because I'm familiar with it. All right. So since we on here, we'll come to an end pretty soon. But we got Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. It says that the Tariff Act of 1930, commonly known as Smoot-Hawley Tariff or Hawley-Smoot Tariff, was an act implementing protectionist trade policies. Okay, make this bigger. Sponsored by Senator Reed Smoot and Representative Willis. Click on this a little bit. It says the Tariff Act, and signed law 1930. The act raised U.S. tariffs on over 20,000 imported goods. So the tariffs under the act were second highest in the U.S. in 100 years, exceeded by a small margin by the tariff of 1828. The act and following retaliatory tariffs by America's trading partners were major factors of the reduction of American exports and imports by more than half during the Depression. Well, okay. Smoot-Hawley, I learned something tonight. I wasn't familiar with this particular act, so it sounds like this initial legislation here, I'm not sure what started it, but it was a part of the idea of putting pressure on surrounding countries that then made them respond, which then led to, as it says here, probably, it spurred on even more the Depression, because all those companies and whatnot, it was losing money while listed on the stock exchange. So, interesting. Thanks for sharing that information. So, as always, we are drawing towards the end. We've been over our mark. We've actually been closer to probably we've been an hour. And so, having such a good time, you lose track of time. So, we're drawing towards the end. If no one calls in to extend us, we going to ride out tonight. It's 10:30 Eastern Standard Time, so it's been great as always. And I want to leave you guys with some things to do, some assignments to support the channel. Make sure you follow me on Facebook at RTD News or at just rethinkingthedollar.com. If you're new to RTD, visit the RTD University page where I put together all my prior interviews, which I believe is a thorough education to help you become more aware of what's happening. Then follow me on Twitter, and then also get a free ebook and the silver giveaway. If you have not, make sure you get involved in that. Looking forward to picking a winner next week. And then I have a crypto giveaway coming as well. I'm looking forward to that as well, because I think more people will probably like the offer I'm going to probably put up. I'm going to put up a couple of them things and see how people respond to that. So other than that, everybody's been great chit chat with you guys tonight. Thank you as always. Make sure you give me a thumbs up for this video, and let me share this so family friends can become aware of what's going on. So other than that, everybody enjoy your night, and I'll see you next week, same time, same place. All right.